Alright, welcome back to another quick review. Today I am talking about The Legend of Heroes Trails Through Daybreak. Now, to preface this review, I've played this game twice. This is my second time playing this game. If you want to hear my initial thoughts on the game, you can go back and watch my Trails ranking video. I ranked every singular Trails game that I had played up to that point, which included Trails Through Daybreak before its official English release. But now I'm going to talk about the game post official English release. And to sum it up, I really enjoyed this game. I had a lot of fun with it the second time around. It once again, my opinions on it definitely better benefit with being, with everything being official, not fan translated or whatnot. My opinions on certain characters, certain plot points or whatnot have definitely benefited from that. But at the same time, I still definitely have my faults with my issues with this game, right? One of the positives, some positives, I adore the music as usual. Trails music is great, but I adore the music of this game. The music is great, and then combat. I definitely synced with combat the second time around, more than the first time around. Um, and the combat in gameplay mechanics and systems are really good. Um, between more freedom with the turn-based combat as well as field combat being more expansive than it was, in Cold Steel 4 and Reverie and whatnot. Um, Combat overall is phenomenal. It's great here. Another thing that I love, side quests, and how it contributes overall to the world building as a whole is really really good. I love it. Side quests in this game are like top notch, some of the best side quests in the series. Now, where my opinions of the game start to go all over the place is the story and the characters. I like the story. I'm not the biggest fan of Almada as villains per se, so I enjoy the story. There's nothing inherently wrong with it, but there's nothing that really wows me, right? There's nothing that gets me to go, oh my god, that is the most insane thing I've ever seen, right? But there's nothing inherently wrong with it, so I can't really say it's like the greatest thing in the world or the worst thing in the world. Now the characters, I can talk about. Um, I definitely like the characters more than I did when I first played the game, as this game has a massive found family theme that I really enjoyed this time around. I just wish that some of these characters had better personalities and slash or more to do, right? Which all comes down to it all comes down to personal preference at the end of the day in regards to opinions on characters. Characters like Reset have never interested me much, and even other types of media, other different franchises. Like I'm not the biggest fan of Aegis from Persona 3, which is ironic because they're voiced by the same voice actor. But I'm not the biggest fan of her, simply because of the fact that I'm just not a massive fan of that type of character archetype. Now I think Reset has definitely more of a personality than Aegis, but Aegis is miles better in terms of character development. But in either situation, I'm not the biggest fan of that character archetype, right? Characters like Bergard and Judith um, needed more than they got. They needed a bit more than what they got. Fairy and Katra were great personality wise, but without spoiling Daybreak 2, um, there's just not too much in here that makes them not stand out on their own, because they definitely do, but they're not as compelling as some of the other characters that, like I said, without spoiling Daybreak 2, that comes in that game, right? Um, their arcs just kind of end in abruptly, right? It's just kind of like an abrupt ending to their arcs, right? Um, not like the most abrupt ending. There's like little things sprinkled in for them throughout the game, but not much to really make an impact on me as a player, me personally. Um, the arcs definitely seem to set up for the future. I've gone into detail about Anya's in the Trails ranking video, but to sum it all up, I'm still not the biggest fan of her. She falls into the trap that Elisa and Ellie do, where she's a heroine that's supposed to be important. In this case, she actually is. She actually is really important. But outside of that, I feel like there once again doesn't get too much to do, um, because they push this dynamic between Van and Elaine, which I'll get to later because I also have thoughts on that. Um, she's literally Cold Steel 1 and 2, those two specific games. Cold Steel 1 and 2 Elisa mixed with Ellie throughout the entirety of the Crossbow games. Given more story importance, a worse personality, because I'm not the biggest fan of her personality or that character archetype in general. Um, that's just not for me. And is given what both characters share, being an attractive. Um, she has an attraction to the main character, which is hella iffy in this game specifically. In this game specifically, it's way weirder. Now, I will say I definitely enjoyed Anya's more a bit more in this game, than in the Japanese version. Right, the Japanese voice actress definitely didn't help that case for me. I wasn't a massive fan, but I definitely enjoyed her more. My opinion on her definitely grew a bit, but at the end of the day, I'm still not that much of a fan of her. But she's more bearable, and I can see why people like her. It's just not a character for me. Back to the topic at hand. I'm all for characters that are fully developed and are just navigating their world or trying the best to apply their personalities to the people around them. That's why I love, just in general characters like Superman so much, which is such an unfair comparison now that I'm thinking about it. But bear with me. The issue is that, in my opinion, I feel as they were a tad bit underdeveloped because of how abrupt their arcs seem to end, or their arcs seem like set up. How each character has like a story that's confined to like one chapter, and then after that there isn't much. What I'm saying is I need more. I need more. Is reasons like that make me say I think Daybreak has my least favorite cast of characters. Um, don't get me wrong, there's some standouts, but I think there's some has my least favorite cast of characters. With something like the Cold Steel games with a huge amount of characters, it was only natural that some characters didn't get as much as others, right? I had the same issue with Final Fantasy VI. It's my favorite game of all time. Don't get it twisted, but that game has more characters than it knows what to do with. But when you're coming off of Class 7 and have the opportunity to create a much smaller cast of characters that would, in theory, allow you to focus in on some of these stories more, and you don't do that, that's frustrating me and brings those characters down, in my opinion. And what's even more unfortunate is that they proved that they could do that with, C's group and Reverie. Now that's also a tad bit of build up from previous games, but even still, I feel like that was done really well in Reverie. And like I said, don't get it twisted. I still have characters that I absolutely love and adore. Um, Van is a top three Trails protagonist for me, up there with Estelle and Reen, in my opinion. Characters like Elaine, Fairy, Catra, and even Burgard I adored. But at the end of the day, besides maybe Van and Elaine, they all kind of fall flat in some way, shape, or form. I really wish I could say more because I'm trying to stick to talking about this game specifically. I don't want to spoil anything related to Daybreak 2. But it's hard to comment on these characters, especially because I know what is happening next. Um, I think a lot of my issues with Daybreak comes down to personal preference, like the character archetypes. Like I said, I'm not a massive fan of the archetypes that Reset and Anya's fall under. Same thing with Aaron, but I think that's done slightly better to the point where, unlike Anya, who I'm not a fan of, and Reset I have really no interest in. I'm not interested in. Aaron was at least somewhat enjoyable to have around in a lot of ways. Um, and then the last thing I want to talk about is, in regards to the characters, is how it it's how some of these characters are treated in this game. What I'm specifically talking about is Elaine and Renee, um, because they're trying to push this trio so hard, or at least push this trio a lot. But the issue is that you don't get too much moments with them interacting with each other, and then after pushing them so hard, just for these characters to be left out of pivotal moments really does kind of burn a bit. And I know it's like for Van to move on, have new people in his life that actively remind him what the old people meant to him and how he hurt them and his actions toward them in the past. But at the same time, like I said, when you're building up these characters just to leave them out of pivotal moments, for me at least, it rubs me the wrong way. Not a big fan of that. Otherwise, I really enjoyed myself with it. I really enjoyed myself. I had a lot of fun with this game. I think it's really good. Um, it's like it's middle of the pack Trails game for me, which is saying a lot because I think this game is a 9 out of 10, which just speaks to the quality of the Trails games, right? The Brown, I am of the opinion that the positives outweigh the negatives if the positives are high enough. And this game has so many positives and some really good highs that and some really good setup as well as just overall being an overall a complete experience, which I appreciate. Rather than as much as I love those cliffhangers, they can leave a sore taste in your mouth, especially if the next game doesn't build on that well. It being an overall complete experience, I still really enjoyed it. It's a middle of the pack Trails game for me. It's a 9 out of 10. I think you should absolutely go play it. I think is the greatest starting point. Me personally, I'm 50-50. On one hand, I'm not going to tell you to not start with, Sky FC or even CS1 because that's or Coastal 1 because that's where I started. But at the same time, you can absolutely start from this game and be fine. But yeah, thank you for watching. This quick review. See ya. Bye.